Ryan had been living alone in his small apartment for almost 2 years. Life was simple, predictable, and exactly how he liked it. He worked his 9-to-5 job, came home, watched some TV, and went to bed. Nothing exciting ever happened, and honestly, he preferred it that way. But all of that changed on a Tuesday evening when he got home from work. He walked into his apartment, threw his keys on the kitchen counter, and headed straight to his bedroom to change out of his work clothes. That's when he froze in the doorway. There was a woman in his room. Not just in his room, but standing there completely comfortable, wrapped in his towel, fresh out of his shower. Her wet hair dripped water onto his carpet, and she looked at him like this was the most normal thing in the world. Ryan's brain couldn't process what he was seeing. He blinked twice, hoping maybe he was just tired and imagining things. But no, she was still there. The woman smiled at him, completely confident, like she owned the place. She didn't scream, didn't apologize, didn't even look surprised to see him. Instead, she walked right past him, leaving a trail of water droplets, and casually mentioned something about the water pressure being better than she expected. He finally found his voice. "Who are you? What are you doing in my apartment?" His words came out shaky, confused. She turned around and looked at him with those calm eyes, then said her name was Lisa. She spoke like they were old friends catching up, not like she had just broken into his home. She explained that she had nowhere else to go and remembered he had mentioned once, years ago at some party they both attended, that he lived alone. She took that as an invitation, apparently. Ryan tried to understand. He vaguely remembered meeting someone named Lisa at his friend David's birthday party 3 years ago. They had talked for maybe 20 minutes. He might have mentioned his apartment in passing, but that was it. Just small talk. Nothing that would justify this situation. He started to panic a little. Should he call the police? But she wasn't threatening him. She wasn't stealing anything. She was just there, acting like this was completely normal. Before he could decide what to do, Lisa walked back into his bedroom and closed the door. He heard her moving around, opening drawers. His drawers. A few minutes later, she emerged wearing his favorite hoodie and a pair of his sweatpants. They were way too big on her, but she had rolled up the sleeves and legs. She looked comfortable, settled in. Then she did something that completely shocked him. She walked to his bed, pulled back the covers, and climbed in, his bed. She looked at him one more time, smiled that same confident smile, and told him good night. It wasn't even 7 in the evening yet. Ryan stood there in his own doorway, completely dumbfounded. This couldn't be happening. He walked into the living room and sat on his couch, trying to figure out what to do. Part of him wanted to march back in there and demand she leave immediately. But another part of him, the part that remembered being raised to be polite and help people in need, felt bad about throwing someone out on the street. She had said she had nowhere to go. What if that was true? What if she was in real trouble? He spent the next hour sitting on his couch arguing with himself. Every few minutes he would stand up, ready to go in there and take back his room. But then he would sit back down, thinking about how she might react. She seemed so calm, so sure of herself. Maybe she was dangerous, or maybe she was just desperate. He didn't know anything about her situation. He pulled out his phone several times, ready to call David and ask about her, but it was late, and he didn't want to bother anyone with this bizarre situation. How would he even explain it? Finally, exhausted from overthinking, Ryan grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet and tried to get comfortable on his couch. It was too short for his height, and the cushions were lumpy. He had never actually tried to sleep on this couch before. Now he understood why. Every position felt wrong. He could hear nothing from his bedroom, no sounds, no movement. Lisa had apparently gone to sleep in his bed without a care in the world. As Ryan lay there staring at his ceiling, he wondered how his simple, boring life had turned into this. Just this morning, everything had been normal. Now there was a stranger sleeping in his bed, wearing his clothes, and he was stuck on his uncomfortable couch. Tomorrow, he promised himself, tomorrow he would sort this out. He would talk to her properly, understand what was going on, and figure out how to handle this situation. But tonight, he was too tired and confused to deal with any of it. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, though his mind kept racing with questions that had no answers. Morning came too quickly. Ryan woke up with a stiff neck and a sore back. The couch had been even more uncomfortable than he thought possible. He checked his phone and realized his alarm hadn't gone off because he had fallen asleep before setting it. Great. Now he was running late for work. He jumped up, ready to rush to his bedroom to grab his work clothes, but then he remembered. Lisa. She was still in there. He knocked on his own bedroom door. It felt ridiculous, knocking to enter his own room, but what else could he do? There was no answer. He knocked again, a bit louder this time. Still nothing. Carefully, he opened the door just a crack and peeked inside. The bed was empty, perfectly made like a hotel bed. His clothes from yesterday were folded neatly on his dresser. He could hear the shower running in his bathroom. She was using his shower again. Ryan grabbed his clothes quickly and changed in the living room. He needed to get to work, and he couldn't wait around for her to finish. He would deal with this situation tonight. As he was putting on his shoes, the bathroom door opened. Lisa walked out, again wrapped in his towel, her hair wet. She looked at him and smiled, wishing him a good day at work like they were roommates or something. He mumbled something back, grabbed his bag, and rushed out the door. The whole situation was too weird to process before coffee. Work was a disaster. Ryan couldn't concentrate on anything. His mind kept wandering back to his apartment. What was Lisa doing there right now? Was she going through his stuff? Was she still there at all, or had she left? Part of him hoped she would be gone when he got home, but another part, a smaller part he didn't want to admit existed, was curious about why she was there in the first place. Nobody just shows up at a stranger's apartment and acts like that unless something serious was going on. During his lunch break, Ryan finally called David. He tried to sound casual, asking if he remembered Lisa from his birthday party years ago. David thought for a moment and then remembered her. She was a friend of his girlfriend's cousin or something like that. He didn't know much about her, just that she seemed nice at the party. Ryan wanted to ask more, wanted to explain what was happening, but he couldn't find the words. How do you tell someone that a person they barely know has taken over your apartment? It sounded crazy even in his own head. The rest of the workday dragged on forever. When 5 o'clock finally came, Ryan packed up his things and headed home with a mix of nervousness and determination. He had decided during the day that tonight would be different. Tonight he would have a proper conversation with Lisa. He would be firm, but fair. He would understand her situation, but also make it clear that she couldn't just stay in his apartment without any discussion or agreement. He opened his apartment door and immediately noticed something different. The place smelled amazing. Someone had been cooking. He walked into his small kitchen and stopped in surprise. The counters were clean, cleaner than they had been in months. His dishes, which he usually left piling up for days, were all washed and put away. The trash had been taken out. Even his floors looked like they had been swept. Lisa appeared from the bedroom, and this time she was wearing her own clothes. She must have gone out and gotten her things at some point during the day. She looked more relaxed now, less like she was ready to run at any moment. She told him she had made dinner as a thank you for letting her stay. Ryan opened his mouth to say he hadn't actually let her stay, that she had just taken over, but she was already pulling out plates and serving food. The meal was good, really good. They sat at his small table, and for a few minutes they ate in silence. Then Ryan cleared his throat, ready to start the conversation he had been planning all day. But before he could speak, Lisa started talking. She apologized for the way she had shown up. She knew it was wrong, knew it was crazy, but she had been desperate. She explained that she had been staying with a friend But that situation had fallen apart suddenly. She had no family in the city, and her job had just let her go due to budget cuts. She had nowhere to go and very little money. Ryan listened, and despite his frustration, he felt sympathy creeping in. He asked her why she didn't go to a shelter or find some other help. Lisa looked down at her plate and said she had tried, but everything was full. She had spent one night sleeping in her car, and it had been terrifying. She remembered him from that party, remembered him being kind when everyone else was drunk and loud. He had listened when she talked about her job troubles back then. So she took a chance, found his address through some mutual social media connections, and showed up. She knew it was too much to ask, but she was out of options. Ryan didn't know what to say. He had spent all day preparing to kick Lisa out, but now, hearing her story, he felt stuck. He wasn't the kind of person who could just throw someone out on the street, especially someone who genuinely seemed to have nowhere to go. But at the same time, this situation was completely crazy. She was basically a stranger who had invaded his personal space without permission. They talked for a while longer after dinner. Lisa promised it would only be for a few days, just until she could figure something out. She had some job interviews lined up, and once she got her first paycheck, she would find her own place. She swore she wouldn't be a burden. She would stay out of his way, help around the apartment, and respect his space. Ryan found himself agreeing, though he wasn't sure how it happened. Maybe it was the food, or maybe it was just his inability to say no when someone was clearly struggling. That night, Lisa offered to take the couch. She said it wasn't fair that he had to sleep there when it was his apartment. But Ryan insisted. He had already spent one night on that terrible couch, and honestly, the thought of doing it again made his back hurt. Besides, it felt weird to have a guest sleeping on the couch while he took the bed, even if that guest had originally taken the bed without asking. So they compromised. Lisa would take the couch, and Ryan would take his bedroom back. The next few days fell into an odd routine. Ryan would wake up, and Lisa would already be awake, making coffee. She had somehow figured out exactly how he liked it. They would exchange a few words, and then he would go to work. When he came home, the apartment would be clean, dinner would be ready, and Lisa would update him on her job search. She had gotten a couple of callbacks, which was promising. Everything seemed to be working out okay. But Ryan started noticing small changes. His life, which had been so predictable and routine, was different now. He couldn't just come home and zone out in front of the TV in his underwear. He had to be presentable, had to make conversation. At first it was annoying, but slowly he realized he didn't mind it as much as he thought he would. Having someone to talk to after work was actually kind of nice. Lisa was easy to talk to. She had interesting stories about her life, and she actually listened when he talked about his boring office job. One evening, about 5 days after Lisa had first appeared in his apartment, Ryan came home to find her sitting on the couch looking worried. Her phone was on the table in front of her, and she was staring at it like it might explode. He asked if everything was okay, and she hesitated before answering. She admitted that someone had been trying to contact her, someone she had been avoiding. Ryan felt a knot form in his stomach. This sounded like the beginning of a problem. Lisa explained that she had left her previous living situation not just because of money problems, but because of a guy. Not a boyfriend, she was quick to clarify, but a roommate who had become obsessed with her. He had started acting strange, following her around, showing up at her work. When she told him she was uncomfortable and wanted to move out, he had gotten angry. Really angry. She had left in a hurry, taking only what she could carry, and had been trying to stay off his radar ever since. But somehow, he had found her number and had been calling non-stop for the past 2 days. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. This was more serious than he thought. He asked if she had gone to the police, and Lisa shook her head. She said she didn't have any proof of real threats, just a feeling that something wasn't right. The guy, whose name she didn't want to say out loud, had never actually hurt her or explicitly threatened her. He was just creepy, intense, and wouldn't leave her alone. The police had told her there wasn't much they could do unless he actually did something. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed, thinking about everything Lisa had told him. This wasn't just about someone needing a temporary place to stay anymore. This was about someone who might actually be in danger. He thought about telling her to leave, that this was too much drama for him to handle. But every time he considered it, he felt guilty. What kind of person would he be if he kicked her out, knowing someone might be looking for her? Around midnight, Ryan heard a sound from the living room. He got up quietly and peeked out. Lisa was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest, looking at her phone. Even in the dim light, he could see she had been crying. She looked so small and scared, completely different from the confident woman who had walked into his apartment less than a week ago. That confident smile, that bold attitude, it had all been a mask. Underneath, she was just someone trying to survive a difficult situation. Ryan went back to his room without saying anything. He didn't want to embarrass her by letting her know he had seen her upset. But he made a decision that night. Whatever was going on, whatever trouble Lisa was in, he would help her figure it out. At least for now. At least until she was safe and stable. He wasn't sure why he felt this responsibility toward someone he barely knew, but he did. Maybe it was because he had always been someone who helped when he could. Or maybe it was because, despite everything, Lisa had brought something into his quiet, lonely life that he hadn't realized was missing. Someone who needed him. Someone who, in her own strange way, had trusted him enough to show up at his door when she had nowhere else to go. Morning came, and Ryan woke up feeling exhausted despite sleeping in his own bed. His mind had been racing all night, thinking about Lisa's situation and what he should do about it. When he walked into the living room, he found the couch empty and neatly made. The blanket was folded perfectly, and the pillow was placed just right. For a moment he wondered if Lisa had left during the night without saying goodbye. But then he heard movement in the kitchen. Lisa was there making breakfast. She looked tired, too, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She smiled when she saw him, but it wasn't that confident smile from before. This one was smaller, more genuine, and maybe a little sad. She had made eggs and toast, and the coffee was already brewing. They sat down to eat without saying much at first. The silence wasn't exactly comfortable, but it wasn't terrible either. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people have things to say, but don't know how to start. Finally, Ryan spoke up. He told Lisa that he had been thinking about what she said last night about the guy who was bothering her. He asked if there was anything he could do to help. Lisa looked surprised, like she hadn't expected him to bring it up. She said she appreciated it, but didn't want to drag him into her problems. Ryan insisted, though. He said if someone was potentially dangerous, they should at least have a plan. What if this guy somehow found out where she was staying? That question hung in the air between them. Lisa admitted she had been worried about the same thing. She had been careful not to tell anyone where she was, and she hadn't posted anything on social media in days. But this guy, whose name she finally revealed was Kevin, was persistent. He had already found ways to contact her that she thought he couldn't. Who knew what else he might figure out? Ryan suggested she change her phone number, and Lisa said she had considered it but worried that potential employers wouldn't be able to reach her about jobs. They spent the rest of breakfast talking through different options. Maybe Lisa could get a temporary restraining order. Maybe she could stay with someone else for a while. But every option seemed to have problems. Lisa didn't have any other friends in the city close enough to stay with. Her family lived in another state, and she didn't have money for a bus ticket. The restraining order might work, but it would take time to get, and she would need proof that Kevin was actually threatening her. His calls and messages had been weird and intense, but not specifically threatening. He mostly just asked where she was and said he wanted to talk. Ryan left for work that day feeling uneasy. He gave Lisa his number and told her to call him immediately if anything happened or if Kevin somehow showed up. She promised she would. Throughout the day, Ryan checked his phone constantly. Every notification made him jump, worried it might be Lisa saying something had gone wrong. But nothing happened. The day passed quietly, almost too quietly. When Ryan got home that evening, Lisa was sitting on the couch with her laptop. She looked excited for the first time in days. She had gotten an email from one of the companies she had interviewed with. They wanted her to come in for a second interview tomorrow. It was a good job, too. One that paid well and offered benefits. If she got it, she would have enough money to get her own place within a month. Ryan felt genuinely happy for her. Maybe everything would work out after all. They decided to celebrate with pizza. Ryan ordered from his favorite place, and they sat on the couch watching a movie. It felt almost normal, like they were friends hanging out instead of two people in a weird temporary living arrangement. Lisa laughed at the funny parts of the movie, and Ryan noticed how different she looked when she wasn't stressed or scared. She was actually pretty nice to be around when she wasn't wrapped in a towel taking over his bedroom. Then, around 9 o'clock, everything changed. There was a loud knock on the apartment door. Not a normal knock, but an aggressive pounding that made them both jump. Ryan got up to answer it, but Lisa grabbed his arm. Her face had gone completely pale and her hand was shaking. She whispered that he shouldn't answer it. Something in her voice made Ryan freeze. The knocking continued, getting louder and more insistent. A man's voice came from the other side of the door. He was calling out a name, but it wasn't Lisa. He was asking for someone named Michelle. The voice sounded angry and demanding. He said he knew Michelle was in there and that she needed to stop playing games and come out. Ryan and Lisa looked at each other, confused and scared. The man knocked again, even harder this time. Some of Ryan's neighbors had opened their doors and were peeking out to see what the noise was about. Ryan made a decision. He walked to the door and opened it, keeping the chain lock on so it would only open a few inches. There was a tall guy standing there, maybe in his 30s, with messy hair and wild eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw Ryan, he seemed surprised. He asked again about Michelle, saying she was his girlfriend and he knew she was hiding in this building. Ryan told him firmly that there was no one named Michelle in his apartment and that he needed to leave before someone called the police. The guy argued, saying someone had told him Michelle was in this apartment number. He tried to look past Ryan into the apartment, but Ryan blocked his view. Behind him, Ryan could hear Lisa moving quietly, probably trying to stay out of sight. The guy started to get more aggressive, raising his voice and demanding to be let in. Some of Ryan's neighbors had pulled out their phones, and one older lady said she was calling the building manager. That seemed to snap the guy out of it a little. He looked around at all the people watching and suddenly backed off. He muttered something under his breath about Michelle lying to him and stormed off toward the stairs. Ryan closed and locked the door, his heart pounding. He turned to Lisa, who was standing in the corner of the living room, looking absolutely terrified. She said that wasn't Kevin, that was someone else, which meant there were now two problems instead of one. Someone was looking for a Michelle in this building, and Kevin was still out there somewhere, trying to find Lisa. Ryan sat down heavily on the couch, trying to process everything that had just happened. His quiet, boring life had somehow turned into something out of a movie, and he had no idea how to handle it. Lisa apologized over and over, saying she never meant to bring any danger to his door. But Ryan knew it wasn't her fault. Not really. She was just trying to survive, trying to stay safe. And now, somehow, he was involved in something much bigger and more complicated than he ever could have imagined. Neither of them slept much that night. Ryan lay in his bed, listening to every sound in the building, wondering if that guy would come back. He kept checking his phone, reading news articles about what to do if someone dangerous shows up at your door. Part of him wanted to tell Lisa that this was too much, that she needed to find somewhere else to go, but he couldn't bring himself to say it, not after seeing how scared she had been. In the morning, everything felt different. The apartment that had started to feel comfortable now felt tense and uncertain. Lisa was already awake when Ryan got up, sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee, staring at nothing. She told him she had decided to skip her interview. It wasn't safe to leave the apartment right now, she said. Ryan disagreed strongly. He told her that job was her way out of this situation. It was her chance to get her own place, to have the money and independence to really deal with her problems. If she skipped the interview because she was scared, she would be stuck in this uncertain situation even longer. After some back and forth, Lisa agreed to go. Ryan offered to take the morning off work and go with her to make sure she got there safely. She tried to say no, but he insisted. They took a cab to the interview instead of public transportation just to be extra careful. Ryan waited in the lobby of the building while Lisa went upstairs for her interview. He sat there for 45 minutes, scrolling through his phone, trying to look casual while actually watching every person who came through the door. When Lisa finally came back down, she looked different, more confident, more like the version of herself that had first walked into his apartment. The interview had gone really well, she said. They seemed to really like her, and they even mentioned that they were looking to fill the position quickly. They would let her know by the end of the week. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope. Real, solid hope. On the cab ride back to Ryan's apartment, they both felt a little lighter. Maybe things were starting to turn around, but when they got back to the building, that feeling disappeared. Ryan's apartment door was slightly open. He knew he had locked it when they left. He absolutely knew it. Lisa grabbed his arm and they both stood there in the hallway, not sure what to do. Ryan pulled out his phone, ready to call the police, but then he heard movement inside. Someone was in there, going through his things. Making a stupid decision that he would later question, Ryan pushed the door open. A man was standing in his living room, looking through the papers on Ryan's desk. The man turned around, and Ryan recognized him immediately from the photos Lisa had shown him. It was Kevin. He was shorter than Ryan expected, with neat hair and expensive-looking clothes. He didn't look dangerous at first glance. He looked normal, like someone you might work with in an office. But there was something off about his eyes, something intense and unsettling. Kevin smiled when he saw them, like he had been expecting this. He apologized for letting himself in, saying the door had been unlocked, which was obviously a lie. He said he was looking for Lisa and had finally tracked her down. He spoke calmly, almost friendly, but every word felt like a threat. He said they needed to talk, that Lisa had left without giving him a chance to explain things. He insisted he just wanted to understand why she had run away from their living situation. He made it sound so reasonable, so innocent, like Lisa was the one being unreasonable. Lisa told him to leave. Her voice was steady, but Ryan could see her hands shaking. Kevin ignored her and kept talking, saying how worried he had been, how he had spent weeks looking for her, how it wasn't fair of her to just disappear. Ryan stepped forward and told Kevin firmly that he needed to leave immediately, or Ryan would call the police. Kevin finally looked at Ryan then, really looked at him, sizing him up. For a moment, Ryan thought Kevin might actually try something. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Then Kevin's expression changed. He put his hands up in a surrender gesture and said he didn't want any trouble. He would go, but only if Lisa agreed to meet with him later to talk things through properly. Lisa refused, saying there was nothing to talk about. Kevin's fake friendly expression cracked a little, and Ryan saw real anger flash across his face. But Kevin controlled himself, took a breath, and said this wasn't over. He knew where Lisa was now. He could come back any time. Then he walked past them and left, leaving the door wide open behind him. Ryan immediately locked the door and put the chain on. His hands were shaking now, too. They called the police and filed a report about Kevin breaking into the apartment. The officers who came were sympathetic but said that unless Kevin had actually threatened them or damaged property, there wasn't much they could do right away. They could file for a restraining order, but that would take a few days to process. In the meantime, the officers suggested changing the locks and being careful about who they let into the building. That night, neither of them wanted to be in the apartment. It felt violated, unsafe. Ryan called his friend David and explained everything that had been happening. David was shocked and immediately offered to let them both stay at his place for a few days. They packed quick bags and left within an hour. Being in David's guest room and on his couch felt strange, but it was better than staying somewhere Kevin knew about. Over the next few days, Lisa got the call she had been hoping for. The company wanted to hire her. She would start in a week, and her first paycheck would come 2 weeks after that. It was the beginning of a real solution. Ryan helped her file for the restraining order against Kevin, and with his own statement as a witness to the break-in, they had enough evidence for the judge to approve it. Kevin was legally required to stay away from Lisa now, and if he violated that order, he would face serious consequences. Lisa found a small studio apartment that she could afford once her paycheck started coming in. Ryan offered to cover her first month's rent and security deposit as a loan, which she accepted after a lot of hesitation. She promised to pay him back as soon as she could. They moved her few belongings into her new place together, and suddenly, after weeks of chaos, things felt calm again. On Lisa's first day at her new job, Ryan took her out for coffee to celebrate. They sat in a quiet cafe, and Lisa thanked him for everything he had done. She said she knew she had crashed into his life in the craziest way possible, and that most people would have kicked her out immediately. But he had helped her when she had absolutely nothing and nowhere to go. Ryan said he was just glad she was safe now and that everything had worked out. They stayed friends after that. Lisa would text him updates about her job and her new apartment. Sometimes they would meet for lunch or coffee. The whole experience had been bizarre and stressful and sometimes scary, but it had also changed both of them. Ryan's life was a little less lonely now. He had learned that sometimes helping someone, even when it's inconvenient and complicated, is the right thing to do. And Lisa had learned that there were still good people in the world who would help without expecting anything in return. As for Kevin, they never heard from him again after the restraining order was issued. Maybe it had scared him enough to finally leave Lisa alone, or maybe he had moved on to bothering someone else. They hoped it was the former, but suspected it might be the latter. Either way, Lisa was free, safe, and building a new life for herself. And Ryan got his apartment back, his bed back, and his quiet life back. Though now, that quiet life didn't feel quite as good as it used to. Sometimes he actually missed having someone around, but that was a thought for another.